Okay, dear friends, I want to share with you an amazing finding in the Parsha that we find both Purim and Hanukkah alluded to in the Parsha. Both Purim and Hanukkah. And that's pretty incredible because, as you know, Purim and Hanukkah are rabbinic holidays, and the events that they celebrate and commemorate did not occur for 1,000 years, at least later or more. So to find them in the Parsha, hints of them, allusions, if you decode the Parsha, you will find them. Okay, so let's start with Hanukkah, because that's the holiday that's coming up. Where is Hanukkah in the Parsha? And what's it doing with Yaakov and Esav? So we know that Yaakov was traveling back to Israel with his entire mishpacha, with a lot of wealth, with a lot of children, Baruch Hashem, in order to establish himself in the land that was rightfully his / and ours. Okay, so on the way something happened, and he found himself alone. While he was alone, he was attacked, or he struggled somehow with this meeting with a certain angel. Who is this angel? So the Torah does not tell us, but the Rabbanim tell us that this angel was the angel of Esav. Esav has an angel that protects it. Actually, every nation has an angel that represents it in heaven. And that is something that we need to contend with. We don't just contend with our enemies in this world, in Olam Hazeh. We also have to contend with their representatives who are petitioning God against us many times in Shemaim in heaven as well. That itself needs to be noted. So why was Yaakov by himself? We know he's schlepping with his entire mishpacha, and then he finds himself by himself. So the Pasuk tells us that Yaakov went back for something. What did he go back for? He went back, the rabbis tell us, because he left jars. Pachim ketanim. He left jars back where he came from, and he wanted to go back and pick up these jars. This travel back to pick up these jars was not coincidental and was not just about jars. There's something else when it comes to this return, but because of this, and because of these jars, and because of the fact that he was by himself, he ends up fighting with the Sar, with the Malach, the angel of Esav. So there's a discussion about these jars. First of all, we're told, first of all, we should know that Yaakov was very, very wealthy. And the jars were a small thing that he just carried with him. Why would he leave these jars behind? All right? And why would he go back for them considering he is so wealthy? So the rabbis tell us that everyone should realize that every single material possession that you have has value. If you own something, you own it for a reason and for a purpose, and most importantly, for a means to an end. What is the end? To bring you closer to Hashem. Every physical item. I know we live in a world with a lot of physical items. It used to be your average Jewish home had, 10 items in it: a bed, a chair, some oil, maybe salt if you were wealthy, right? And once a week, maybe if you're lucky, you had a chicken. And that was pretty much it. And some matches, right? And so there wasn't much in the house. I read a book, or I picked up a book actually, when I was in the library with my kids many years ago. I can't remember the name of it, but it says your average home today, in today's day and age, has inside it like 20,000 items. 20,000 individual items in every Western, at least, home. When I think of every nail, every screw, every piece of clothing, it used to be 10, now it's 20,000. Every item that we have is actually a bracha and is meant to somehow be used to improve us, to help the world become a better place in order to serve Hashem, serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Where do we learn this out? From Yaakov. Yaakov was the one who said, he said, I'm very wealthy. I don't need these little jars. I'll make some more pachim katanim. No. The fact that Hashem gave them to me and allowed me to have them means they have a purpose. A small purpose, maybe a tiny purpose. Right? A nail is a very small purpose, but it's there, I own it, and I need it in order to improve my connection to Hashem. So he goes back. He goes back. In the schut of this returning to pick up these jars, the Midrash tells us the Hashmonayim, the Maccabees, went in to the Heichal after they drove out the Greeks in the days of Hanukkah, and they found one pach shemen, one jar of oil. There's your Hanukkah allusion in the Parsha. Since he went back to pick up jars in order to keep them, so too, say the rabbis, in the distant future, and I'm sure Yaakov was aware of this, he was such a spiritual giant, his descendants in the distant future, we ought to find one jar of oil that was enough to last for 1 day, ended up lasting for 8 days. That's the Hanukkah nest, the Hanukkah miracle, and from there we have Hanukkah from there on in. Unbelievable. What is going on over here? What is the connection between Yaakov and this jar and Esau? So the rabbis tell us, and this future miracle of Hanukkah, rabbis tell us it's all about, do you have things because you want them, or do you have things because you need them? You see, Esau represents a world of want. We know that, right? He actually turns around to Yaakov and he says, Yesh li rov, I have lots. That's Esau. I don't need your gifts. I've got lots of stuff. Lots of stuff actually means I have lots, but I can have a lot more, right? How does Yaakov respond to that? He says, no, keep them because Yesh li kol, I have everything. Yaakov and Esau represent two worlds of thought. I have lots, but there's always a lot more I can have. Why? Because I want lots. I want to have the kavod. I want to have the honor of having a lot of things. I want to show off my things. Yaakov was extremely wealthy, but so is Esau. So what's the difference? Yaakov is Mr. I have everything I need. That's what I say. Not that I have everything. I have everything that I need in order to fulfill function. Everything that I have is needed by me. That's the depth of Yaakov. He's fighting a battle that's going to last forever, which is I have everything versus I have lots. In the future, in the sort of this way of looking at the world, and by the way, it doesn't mean a person should be poor, chas v'chalila. We want to have a lot of money. It's not cheap to be a Jew. You've got to pay for education, you've got to pay for shidduchim. I'm right now, B'ezrat Hashem, paying for a wedding. Ribbana Shel Olam, right? You need Rov and Kol just for that, I tell you, my goodness. Wow, that's a double whammy right there, Baruch Hashem. Okay, Hashem should bless us. But why do we want it? It's a heichatim, as we say in the Gemara, right? I have it because I need it in order to do something. I don't have it because I want it. That's the difference. In the schut of that, when they walked in after fighting a physical and spiritual battle, they found a jar. One little jar of oil. What is that? That's nothing. A jar of oil, what's the big deal? The whole battle, you know what? You think the wars today are over oil? My friends, the war back then was about oil as well. Not the oil that came out of the ground, but the oil that came out of the olives. Right? The war of Hanukkah is all about oil. And the oil is, do I take my physical possessions and mekadesh them for a higher purpose, or do I take my physical possessions and I have them because I want to show off, I want to show everyone that I have, I want to be a big, haughty person, I have a big ego, and this is what I need in order to have any form of self-worth. Okay, that's Hanukkah, alluded to in the Parsha. Where is Purim? Where is Purim in the Parsha? I know we're far off, but we've got to get through Hanukkah first of all. But where is Purim in the Parsha? I'll show you something unbelievable. There's a Midrash on Megillat Esther. And the Midrash tells us about Mordechai and Haman. And we know that Mordechai refused to bow down to Haman. And this grated on Haman's nerves. It drove him crazy. Haman was very, very wealthy. He was extremely rich. And everyone bowed down to him because he made a law in the land, Achashverosh did on his request, that everyone should bow down except Mordechai. Mordechai said, not me. I'm not bowing down. This drove Haman nuts. He couldn't handle it. Right? He had all the money, all the wealth, all the kavod, but one little measly Jew will not give me honor. He said, I'm going to kill you. Then he changed his mind and said, I'm going to kill all the rabbis. Then he changed his mind again, and this is all alluded to in the Megillat Esther. I'm going to kill every single Jew throughout the entire world. That's the progression that he took. You hate one Jew, eventually you hate them all. And by the way, it makes sense because we are Ish Echad B'Lev Echad. We are all one being. Okay, So Mordechai refused to bow down. Where did Mordechai learn not to bow down to Haman? It's actually his great-great-great-great-grandfather, Yaakov, who did bow down to Esav. We know that Yaakov gave gifts to Esav. We know that Yaakov prayed. We know that Yaakov prepared for war. But one thing we also seem to miss out was that as Esav was approaching him, he bowed down 7 times. 7 times Yaakov. And right after that, Esav was placated. After the 7 times that Yaakov Avinu prostrated himself, vayishtachu arza. Right? By the way, yishtachu means a complete prostration. Anachu korim umishtachavim. Korim is to bow down this. Ishtachavim means he literally prostrated himself 7 times to Esav. Did you know there was a conversation between Mordechai and Haman? And Haman said to Mordechai, you got to bow down to me. You have to bow down. This is what the Midrash tells us. This conversation is not in the Megillah. We just told about the results of the conversation. And Mordechai turns around and says, I'm not going to bow down to you. And Haman gave a great argument. Excuse me, your great-great-great-grandfather, Yaakov, bowed down to my great-great-grandfather, Esav. That we have a Mesorah. Suddenly Haman is into tradition, right? We have a Mesorah that you bow down to me. And Mordechai gave the most incredibly smart answer that you would never have figured out. What's the difference between the bowing down of Yaakov to Esav and Mordechai not bowing down to Haman? It's all about Binyamin. You see, Mordechai told Haman, you're right, Yaakov did bow down to Esav, but Binyamin had not been born yet. You see, once Binyamin was born, it's not just Yaakov, his name becomes Yisrael. Yisrael represents the totality of the Shvatim. And Binyamin had not been born yet. So Yaakov could bow down to Esav. But I cannot bow down to you because we are now Bnei Yisrael. And listen to this amazing final piece to the puzzle. Who was Mordechai a descendant of? What's he referred to in the Megillah? Ish Yemini. He came from Binyamin. So he says, yeah, Yaakov bowed down, but my great-great-grandfather Yaakov's son, Binyamin, no. He wasn't bowing down. That never happened because he wasn't born yet. Had he been born, Yaakov would never have bowed down because Yisrael does not bow down to other people. And I, Mordechai, am a descendant of Yaakov, but I'm a direct descendant of Binyamin. I'm not going to bow down. That drove Haman crazy. He went nuts. So he went to planet mental, and he lost everything because of this one act. That is the connection. That's how we see Purim in the story, because the battles we fight today, listen very carefully, my dear friends, you're not going to understand what's happening in the Middle East today, actually anywhere in the world, without Torah. The Torah reveals secrets to us, not about things in the past, but in the present and the future as well. Listen to this. Haman came from Agag. You remember Agag had a battle with Shaul HaMelech. Shaul also came from the tribe of Binyamin. He did not complete the battle, and so the Malchut traveled from Binyamin, Shaul's tribe, and went to David HaMelech from Shevet Yehudah. That means the future battle of Mashiach and Amalek and Esav is going to be Mashiach ben David, which comes from Yehudah. But at that point, that battle was still located with Shaul. So Shaul fights Agag. And he wins, but he doesn't completely eliminate him the way he should have. He loses Malchut. Mordechai comes along and says, when my great-great-great-grandfather Shaul failed, I'm going to complete his mission. And he does. He closes that chapter when he doesn't bow down to Haman and ends up finishing and defeating Haman. He's actually completing a battle many years before. So we have Shaul versus Melech Agag from Amalek. Amalek and Shaul are fighting. And then Mordechai and Haman are fighting as well. They're direct descendants of each other. Happens all over time. So where are we right now? Where was Haman? Haman was Amalek. But where was he? Persia. In Persia, in Paras. Oh, now we're getting deep. We see that Paras has inside it elements of Amalek from the days of Haman. Before then, they were schlepping around like a bunch of nomads. But now we see Paras has inside it a little bit of Amalek. They are still there today. We call them today Iran, or Iran, which comes from Aryan. I heard from a rabbi who isn't here right now, but he came and told me that Iran, right, or Aryan, comes from Ari. They see themselves like a lion. Actually, the whole Aryan idea of an Aryan race comes from these people, the leaders, not the people. The people are good. I want to make a differentiation. The people are good, for the most part. It's the leaders who have become a jihadi, Islamist, messianic death cult. That is what Iran is today. We know that Ezekiel the prophet tells us who Gog and Magog are. He names the nations. We don't know who those nations are today except one. There's one nation who Ezekiel the prophet, when describing Gog and Magog, he says, Paras, modern day Iran. So Amalek is still there. Amalek has traveled through history. They've been a thorn in our sides, actually in our eyes, to this very day. Where are they? All over the world. They're not located in one specific location, but the leadership right now in Persia, in Iran, these ayatollahs, although they are Bnei Ishmael, they have inside them traits of Amalek. As we see, Haman was in Persia, and so too today we're seeing Amalek. By the way, what is the identifying trait of Amalek? How do we know what they're all about? Well, we've seen it again and again and again. For when we left Mitzrayim, they came to attack us knowing full well they were on a suicide mission and they lost that battle with Moshe Rabbeinu and Yoshua. And then they came back in the days of Shaul and they lost that battle too eventually. And they came back in the days of the Purim story and they lost that battle too. And they came back in the form of the Nazis, which most rabbis today recognize is seed of Amalek. And they're coming today in the form of Paras, this Aryan nation. So too, that's going to see a downfall. And that is what, as I mentioned on Tuesday, Ovadia the prophet tells us. The Haftarah this week is from Ovadia. Ovadia was a convert to Judaism who came from Edom. He was a convert. A convert can reach the highest heights of being a Navi, a prophet. There's 21 Pesukim. Edom gives us the unique prophecy about the fall of Edom, which means, because Ovadia was an Edomite before he converted to Judaism, which means that an Edomite has to tell us, the Jewish people, about the fall of his nation. Wow, that's doubly cruel, isn't it? Can you imagine that? I mean, Yitro, right, had Chidudim, was a little freaked out when he described the death of the Mitzrayim at the Yam Suf. It couldn't have been easy for Ovadia the prophet. He was a great man. He saved 100 prophets when his bosses, Achav and Yezebel, came to kill them. He saved 100 prophets in 2 caves. By the way, Rashi tells us because of that saving of those prophets, he became a Navi. You become a prophet, by the way, by helping great people. That's what Rashi tells us. That's how he became the prophet of Israel. Isn't that crazy? You help other people, you become a thing, you're a scholar, you're learning. No, he did tremendous chesed at his own life's jeopardy. He became a leader because of that. So he, by the way, what is the secret behind him revealing this? So they say the forest is chopped down using an axe made of wood. So he came from Edom. You see the analogy? He's the axe made of wood. So he could only talk about the downfall of Edom, of Esav. Edom and Esav are together by the actual axe knocking it down. So even he turns around and says, at the end of days, we are going to see the failure of these people and the hand of Mashiach. So we see that this transferal of power is going to move from Binyamin to Mashiach, and he's going to bring the final downfall specifically within Esav. Actually, some people say all of Esav, but specifically through Amalek. That, my friends, is what starts with Yaakov and Esav, continues through history, makes its way into Purim, makes its way into Hanukkah, and then eventually, according to Ovadia the prophet, which is the Haftarah for this week. Why is it the Haftarah this week? Right? What is the connection? It's not the connection, it's the culmination. What starts in the Parsha with Yaakov and Esav ends with Ovadia telling us the Mashiach is going to destroy Esav's descendants at the end of days in Har Seir, which some pointed out to me, Har Seir could actually be Mount Syria. Seir is Syria, maybe. Maybe we're seeing this, Bezrat Hashem, happening right now. B'ezrat Hashem, we're going to see all these events happening will lead us to the ultimate kingdom return to the Jewish people in Eretz Yisrael. Coming b'mehira v'yamenu. Amen. Chazak Baruch.